Chapter 1880, Lower Class Rising to Power. Bai Zhan felt cold sweat breaking out on his back. These days Li Changgong was too suspicious to trust anyone. His biggest worry was that the power he had obtained through an armed coup would be taken away from him in the same way. Bai Zhan's words made Li Changgong think that he was provoking his authority. "No, Commander, I absolutely did not mean that." Li Changgong stood up, resting one hand on his waist and the other on the back of the sofa. "Don't say that Xiao Liu doesn't have the guts to betray me. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to compete with me. This is the Northwest region, and I, Li Changgong, am the king of the Northwest region. Everyone must obey my orders, and no one is allowed to disobey me. Do you understand?" His voice grew louder and louder, and his dark eyes gave Bai Zhan a feeling of madness. Bai Zhan's throat tightened, and he quickly bowed his head and said, "Yes, Commander." Bai Zhan left the office worried. Although he still had many doubts in his heart, he didn't dare to say anything more. "Xiao Liu. I hope I'm just being paranoid. That guy, there's no way he'd cause trouble. Otherwise, he'd be looking for trouble." The next day, Xiao Liu began to visit his closest friends one by one to say goodbye to them. Xiao Liu's house was in a flurry of activity. His wife was directing some soldiers as they loaded up the family's belongings and carried them to the truck. Xiao Liu himself went to Li Changgong's office to say his final goodbyes. Although Li Changgong didn't think Xiao Liu had the guts to rebel, he still gave him a piece of his mind. When he heard these words, Xiao Liu's heart went up to his throat, and without the slightest hesitation, he, with a plop sound, kneeled in front of Li Changgong, holding his hands on the ground and his head against the floor. "Commander, I am just an ordinary junior officer. If it weren't for your promotion, I would never have reached my current position. I have only one feeling in my heart for you, and that is gratitude. My loyalty to you is even more unbreakable than the walls of Chang'an City." Li Changgong lowered his head and saw Xiao Liu, who was prostrate before him like a dog, and his lips curled up in satisfaction. "Okay, I didn't doubt you either. I'm just reminding you to be a bit more low-key in the future. Do a good job after you go to Ebony Town, and if you perform well in the future, I will consider transferring you back to headquarters." Xiao Liu looked grateful and said aloud, "Thank you, Commander." Seeing that Li Changgong did not suspect him, Xiao Liu turned and left, his hair already dripping with sweat. He quickly walked out of the building, and the officer by his side came over to help him into the military vehicle. Sitting in the back seat, Xiao Liu looked up at the command center building that Li Changgong had built for himself, like a fortress made of iron and brick. After the invasion by the Wulwan Empire, Li Changgong rebuilt the building for his own safety. The level of its defenses was even higher than before. Li Changgong moved his own room here, fearing that he would be assassinated. No matter how strong a fortress is, it can be breached from within. After Xiao Liu left, a car driven by a man named Zhonghai drove up from the other direction. His limousine was black all over, and it was hard to see what was inside. After getting out of the car, he glanced at Xiao Liu, who was walking away, and hurriedly walked up the steps towards Li Changgong's office. After reporting in, he was given permission to meet with Li Changgong, and he hurriedly made his way to Li Changgong's office. Commander, I want to report Xiao Liu." Zhonghai shouted as soon as he entered the doors, his teeth gritted. Li Changgong's heart stirred, and he looked up at him. "What did you say?" Zhonghai swallowed, and stood straight in front of Li Changgong. "I want to report Xiao Liu. In private, he once spoke disrespectfully to the commander. He said that you did not know the right people and exiled such an outstanding person as him to the border wilderness. I absolutely cannot tolerate such a despicable act on his part." Li Changgong's mouth curled up in a sneer. "General Chen, I remember that you and Xiao Liu both graduated from the Army Officers Academy, and you were his senior." Zhonghai hurriedly said, "I have no connection with him. Commander, please believe in my loyalty." Li Changgong already guessed the reason why Zhonghai had come. His transfer order to send Xiao Liu away to the border had caused unrest among the troops, especially among the old commander's former subordinates, who were worried that they would be punished. So, Zhonghai immediately came to surrender. However, Li Changgong was not yet ready to let Xiao Liu die. An epsilon will always come in handy, and he is not that stupid. Alright, General Chen, I know your loyalty. Don't worry, you have always done a good job in the City Defense Army, I won't touch you. Zhonghai's face showed a look of gratitude. Thank you, Commander. Li Changgong really likes this kind of person who changes sides, they are very clever and can be put to good use. It's just that he can't say he appreciates the character of such people. If there's nothing else, you can go. He waved his hand. Zhonghai suddenly came up with a flattering approach. I also have other things to report to you, Commander. Li Changgong glanced at him and said, what else? Zhonghai's smile became a bit lustful. I know that you have been working hard for the affairs of the region for many days, so I have brought a few women here to help you relieve your fatigue. Li Changgong is 35 years old and not married. It's not that there's anything physically wrong with him, but at his position, a formal marriage is no longer important. He already has supreme power, so naturally he doesn't lack for women. On the contrary, he is young and strong, and has extremely strong desires. He doesn't hide this in the least, and it is a well-known secret among the senior management of the Northwest region. Recently, he has been busy with regional affairs and is always worried that others may do him harm. He really needs a good rest. Li Changgong raised an eyebrow and leaned over to ask in a low voice, how is it? What else can you say about Zhonghai? Are you saying he tried it? He laughed and bowed, saying, I promise I won't disappoint you. If you're not satisfied, I'll accept your punishment. Li Changgong laughed heartily and rubbed his lower back, where his kidney energy was located. Send them over. That night. Tonight, the two Allied units responsible for street defense in the vicinity of the military command center successfully changed their guard, and these two units were directly under the jurisdiction of General Zhonghai. After the invasion of the Wulwan Empire, the military throughout the Northwest region underwent a major reshuffle. Among them, more than 90% of the soldiers in the Chang'an City Defense Army are newcomers who were promoted at the speed of light after less than a year of training. Under these circumstances, the veterans in the army, as well as that group of experienced officers, are particularly important. After the Great Mutation era, the role of mutants has become far greater than that of ordinary thermal weapons. Even a powerful weapon like the Reaper of Love seems incredibly dull in the face of a mutant of Epsilon level. Xiao Liu has been plotting this revolution for more than a day or two. This was just an opportunity that happened to give him the courage to act. He had been calculating the uncalculating, studying the Chang'an City Defense Troop rotation map every day, and he already had a plan for tonight. Moreover, Li Changgong considered himself invincible in the Northwest region and had no regard for ordinary soldiers. So, with little effort, while Li Changgong was indulging in bed and releasing his pent-up hormones, Xiao Liu's team of officers had already completely taken control of almost all areas outside the command center. The next and greatest obstacle was the defense of the command center bunker. Both the defense of the command center building itself and the personal guard unit directly under Li Changgong inside were difficult to break through. Searchlights shone brightly across the sky in the darkness, and several military vehicles arrived outside the command center building. The air was filled with a solemn atmosphere, and the area around the command center building was unusually quiet. It was always quiet before a storm. Xiao Liu stepped off the military vehicle. He was in full combat uniform tonight, accompanied by a group of trusted subordinates. Their arrival made the members of the personal security detail feel a little strange. Because in recent times, anyone coming to the command center must first notify the higher-ups and receive permission before coming. However, the people who came were Xiao Liu and several senior military officers. Especially Xiao Liu, who could be considered their military idol. An officer hurried down the steps and saw Xiao Liu, and a strange expression appeared on his face. General Xiao, why have you come here? This was Wang Sun, a captain in the personal guard unit and a major in the military. Xiao Liu walked over to him, gave him a deep look in the eyes, and whispered, we have received intelligence that there are enemies among the military. In order to protect the commander and the safety of the people of Chang'an, we must enter the command center building. Wang Sun nodded silently after meeting Xiao Liu's gaze, and then he made a gesture behind him. The soldiers of the personal guard immediately made way. Xiao Liu led the group of officers, and Wang Sun escorted them, entering the command center building directly without any obstruction. On the surface, Wang Sun had no relationship with Xiao Liu. However, in reality, he was a mole that Xiao Liu had planted next to Li Changgong. Although he is only a low-ranking officer, he has the authority to pave the way for Xiao Liu. As soon as Xiao Liu and the others entered the command center, he gave the people around him a wink and acted according to the plan. Their goal was to get the crazy Li Changgong out of power, not to destroy Chang'an City. Therefore, they must occupy the propaganda channels and freeze the command authority of Li Changgong's officers. The collapse of a building is easier from the inside. This is a world made up of people, and orders are passed down from the top, layer by layer, before they can be fully executed and the power of the top echelons can be brought to bear. And once the channels of communication for orders are cut off, it's the same as making the top echelons blind, deaf and dumb. Li Changgong didn't care about this in the past. Ever since he became Epsilon, he felt like he had become a different kind of creature, one that was high above, overlooking the other ordinary humans. The longer it went on, the more he could feel this gap. He rightly believed that in the Northwest region, no one was qualified to challenge his authority, and no one could break into his impenetrable fortress. So at this time, Xiao Liu and the other officers split up and only took a few minutes to completely take control of the entire command center building. The whole process went incredibly smoothly, almost magically so. Xiao Liu led Di Fei, Chen Jiahao, and the others, striding forward. At this time, someone in the building sensed that something was wrong. It was Bai Zhan, the second-generation Skywar god. When he discovered the abnormalities in the various departments of the command center, he came to inquire about it as soon as possible. But those lower-level soldiers and officers knew nothing about such complicated matters. They were only responsible for following the orders of their superior officers. Xiao Liu and the others strode forward, and Bai Zhan rushed quickly down the stairs, trying to find someone to ask what was going on. When he saw Xiao Liu and the others, he understood everything in an instant. Xiao Liu, Di Fei, Chen Jiahao. Who allowed you to come in? Bai Zhan pointed at the three of them and charged at them menacingly. Xiao Liu took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. The next moment, his body rushed towards Bai Zhan like a phantom, and Bai Zhan felt as if his body had been hit by a freight train. Bang! With a loud noise, he was knocked 10 meters away and slammed hard against the wall. Xiao Liu's right hand shot out a dagger, which without hesitation, pierced Bai Zhan's throat. Cough, cough. Bai Zhan's face turned red, his vocal cords were cut directly, and he could no longer make a sound. Xiao Liu took a half-step back as Di Fei and Chen Jiahao came up from the left and right, one controlling his hands while the other destroyed the communication equipment on his body. Di Fei's right hand was pressed against Bai Zhan's throat, a cold warning, stay put. We don't want to kill you. Otherwise, we'll break your neck. Bai Zhan realized what these people wanted to do. His face was red, but there was nothing he could do at the moment. Xiao Liu and the others didn't even look at him as they continued on their way. Before long, the entire command center building had been completely occupied by Xiao Liu and the others. Outside the building, thousands of soldiers arrived in battle tanks and completely blocked off the streets. Chang'an City was very large, and before they moved, they had already redeployed most of the troops that were not under their control. It would take at least 20 minutes for the troops in other areas to arrive, if they arrived at all. Not to mention heavy weapons units, which would be even slower. So in a short time, this place has become Xiao Liu's home turf. However, everyone knows that this is only the prelude. They have solved other problems, but the most difficult one is still how to solve Li Changgong. At this moment, what is Li Changgong doing? He is sweating profusely in a room, and the boredom of recent days can only be rewarded with dopamine through the release of hormones. Again and again, hard work has calmed his mood a lot. But after it was over, he felt a sense of emptiness. He thought of many people. He thought of Luo Yunfeng, the former commander of the Northwest region, who had helped him in the beginning. He had only wanted Luo Yunfeng's position, and had never intended to harm him. But Luo Yunfeng could not bear that humiliation, and had chosen to jump from a 20-story building, ending his life. He also thought of Zhang Yi. He couldn't understand how that warehouse manager had managed to rocket up the ranks so quickly, leaving him, the pride of the heavens, far behind. Li Changgong sat on the edge of the bed, his upper body naked and covered in bronzed, toned muscles. He smoked a cigarette as his thoughts drifted away. For some reason, he felt a little uneasy tonight. Just then, a pair of snow-white arms came around from behind and gently stroked his chest. "Commander, what are you thinking about?" The beauty leaned over his ear, looking understanding. "Do you want to take a break?" "Take a break?" Li Changgong frowned. "Are you kidding?" Just as Li Changgong was enjoying himself, the black chariot-level mutant's alertness to danger suddenly made him jump out of bed. He sensed that danger was approaching. Li Changgong instinctively picked up his double swords from the side of the bed and immediately gave orders to the guards around him. "What's going on?" But he received no reply to his inquiry. And at that moment, the doors to his room exploded open with a bang. A surging blaze of fire burned in the darkness, pouring from outside into the room and heading straight for Li Changgong. Li Changgong's heart leapt wildly, and he finally knew where that uneasy feeling came from. Clang! The long, sharp sword came out of its sheath, and the explosive power slashed like a balloon. The shockwave dissipated from Li Changgong's side. "Who is it?" Li Changgong roared, and the first thing he did was quickly put on his combat uniform. The wall had been completely blown open, and after the smoke and dust had dispersed, the figures of Xiao Liu and the others were revealed. They were all wearing military-issue dark green combat uniforms, and they looked at Li Changgong with cold eyes. Li Changgong's eyes bulged, and he angrily shouted, "Xiao Liu! You sons of bitches, are you rebelling?" Xiao Liu, however, only responded coldly, "You're the traitor, Li Changgong." Everyone looked at Li Changgong with indifference. They had already gone too far to turn back, and there was no turning back now. Xiao Liu strode forward, saying as he walked, "You seized power through force, and then made the Northwest region your own. Fearing that others might surpass you, you recklessly targeted those talented mutants. Li Changgong, you are a failure." Li Changgong looked at Xiao Liu coldly. He turned his head, looked at Zhonghai behind him, and then glanced sideways at the two trembling women on the bed. He suddenly sneered. "Do you really think you can use such crude tactics against me? You guys are really naive." He placed his hands on the hilt of the two long swords. "Even if you control the entire Northwest region, it doesn't matter to me. As long as I make a move, no one can stop me. I can kill whoever I want." The officers behind Xiao Liu were furious with Li Changgong, but they were also panicking inside. They could only look to Xiao Liu, hoping that this guy could really do what he said. Xiao Liu also smiled, looking at Li Changgong. "Why don't you try it?" Di Fei made a gesture, and those officers did not hesitate, and they directly jumped off the top of the building. These officers in important positions, each of them had a strength of at least 9,000 points in their supernatural ability index. Without a strong enough strength, they simply could not intimidate the current army. However, this battlefield was no longer one they were qualified to participate in. They watched the battle from afar, while commanding the surrounding loyal troops to control the situation. 20 minutes later, if Li Changgong's support troops arrived, it might be a bloody battle. Li Changgong stared at Xiao Liu, narrowed his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "Xiao Liu, I originally thought you were a smart person. I never thought you would do such a stupid thing. The white chariot is challenging the black chariot. The difference in strength between you and me is more than 10,000 points. What can you possibly do to fight me?" Xiao Liu did not answer this question. Instead, he asked, "You should not have forgotten Commander Luo Yunfeng, should you?" Li Changgong's face fell when he heard this name. Xiao Liu continued, "At his funeral, the moment you came over to pay your fake respects, I made up my mind. Sooner or later, I will make you pay for what you have done." He took out 6 grenades in his hands, and his black supernatural power surged out of his body like smoke, carrying a terrifying power that made people's hearts race. Li Changgong's pupils suddenly contracted as he realized that Xiao Liu had been hiding his strength all these years. His true strength was actually not that different from his own. "All these years, I have been waiting for an opportunity. I had hoped that if you could really do a good job as the commander of a large region, I would consider sparing you for the stability of the Northwest region. But you have let me down. A rotten tangerine is a rotten tangerine, and you are hopeless." As soon as the words fell, the grenades in Xiao Liu's hands underwent a strange change, and his body began to pupate, as if it had come to life. Xiao Liu threw them away and they flew towards Li Changgong, screeching like mice as they came around Li Changgong's body in an instant. The next moment, a violent explosion erupted. Li Changgong unsheathed his double swords and, in the blink of an eye, slashed hundreds of times, splitting all the terrifying power with his bare hands. Xiao Liu's fist, however, also appeared on his left side in an instant, slamming into the small of his back. Li Changgong's body twisted nimbly, but in the end, his speed was still half a step too slow. Puff! There was a muffled sound as he was slammed hard, flying through the air, smashing the glass from the tall building and flying out into the world. Li Changgong felt as if his abdomen had been smashed by a mace, and the pain was unbearable. "Good for you, Xiao Liu." Li Changgong's eyes were red. He paused in midair, took a deep breath, and then allowed his combat suit to inject medicine to alleviate the injury. It was only when the real battle began that he realized how poor his current condition was. The 2 women sent from Zhonghai had reduced his physical strength and concentration. But so what? He clenched his hands around the double swords in his hands. One slash. Just one slash. If he could just slash Xiao Liu once, he could end this battle once and for all. He, Li Changgong, is God's will, and everything will crumble at the tip of his sword. Xiao Liu soared into the air and hovered in midair. "My ability, Metal Frenzy, can strengthen all matter, so if I want, I can be a Black Chariot level enhancement mutant, or release department mutant, and the strongest weapon master. Li Changgong, I have followed you for 3 years and have figured out your abilities." He pointed his index finger at Li Changgong's sword. "Your sword is powerful, but as long as one avoids your blade, you are no threat.